The coat and the Chewbacca are back. Well, the coat and the Wookiee are back along with the swords. So this is going to be the Animanda on Titan or Attack on Titan, season 3, part 2 video. I'm going to be talking about everything that happens from, when they're returning to show the whole return to Shiganshina arc, basically. And like the bit at the end where they find out everything, that was the secret in the basement and everything. And I have a couple of keys here. And I'm recording this on the same day that I record the Joe video for Digimon. So I still have a very reliable shirt on. And I would also put that like both Armin and Ervin are very, very reliable people. So I figured that kind of, applies for that. And then of course we learn more about Aaron's father's past, Grisha's past. So we have the doctor bag here to represent him. And of course we have Chewie here representing the Beast Titan. Who's got one hell of an arm on him. And should probably, if like being a Titan never worked out, Zeke could have always tried to join the major leagues. And now coming to the pitcher's mound, we have our first Eldian baseball star. This is not meant to be an insult to anyone. Zeke could have been. I was going to go with the Jackie Robinson of the Eldians in regards to being in the Major League Baseball, but I don't know if that's offensive. So if that was offensive to someone, I'm sorry. That was not my intention. It was supposed to be a joke. And if you found it funny, then that's fine. Or if you can come up with a better metaphor for Zeke being like the first Eldian baseball player type thing, that would be fun. Okay, so this, of course, whole arc revolves around when the Scout Corps, of course, leave after the 2 months. The 2 months after Aaron first turns into a Titan, and the Colossal Titan shows up for the second time, of course, after they all graduate from being Scouts. Everything's happened with Amir. Everything's happened with Historia and her father, and Historia's been queen for about a month at this point in time. Aaron's been training with, of course, his hardening in order to be able to seal up the gate from Shiganshina out and Shiganshina in and everything, so that way they can seal it off from the rest of the Titans, so they can get to the information they need. They're, of course, making their way there in moonlight, so that way they have fewer Titans to deal with, because actually it's not in moonlight, it's on a moonless night. Since they are aware that Titans are powered by the sun, and that, of course, light from the moon is just a reflection of the sun's light, so they travel on a moonless night, which makes perfect sense. Hodge is very smart in this argument, and of course Erwin's there, and Arwen is there. Of course, the rest of the Scout Troop are there, along with some new people like Marlowe and Floch, whatever his name was. They're on their way there, along with a whole bunch of other new recruits that unfortunately don't make it back. They get to Shiganshina, and they, Aaron goes to the one end, and he, activates his Titan power, and he hardens his, uses hardening all over his body to seal the gate, so more Titans cannot come in from that way. And also makes it that the Titans can escape through that way as well. And he hardens that, and then of course Mikasa and Armin get him out of that. And then what happens is, of course, they're going all over the walls, because Armin's like, well, we know that the walls have Titans in them, so we know that Bertolt and Reiner and whoever the Beast Titan is have to be around here. Plus, they also find like evidence of this. They find like a knocked out campfire that's on the top of the wall, and they find like coffee mugs and tea mugs and whatever, and like plates and stuff on the bottom of the wall that look like they were just like kicked down to like hide them. And they're tapping all over the wall, and they find Reiner inside the wall because they find the hollow part of the wall. They also know a whole lot about like the fact that there are the Titans inside the walls, of course, as I mentioned. And Levi stabs Reiner through the neck, and by rights probably should have killed him, but unfortunately that didn't happen. And Reiner is able to transform into the Armor Titan. Reiner had apparently been trying to practice on something where instead of having his consciousness in his brain, he transfers it to the lower half of his body. So even if he's like stabbed through the neck, he'll still survive. Which, admittedly, is a very clever way of doing it. And they show him do this something very similar later, where he transfers his consciousness. It's either all the way up into his brain or down into his body, and then they show him doing something very similar later where he like transfers his consciousness all the way throughout like his Titan body. So even if his nape is cut or if his head's blown off, he'll still survive. Which, admittedly, okay, I don't necessarily like Reiner all that much at this point in time in the arc, and quite honest, I mean, like, he gets more sympathy in regards to like his backstory that, of course, we find out more in the final season, which I am currently working through. And I'm not doing a video on the recap movie. That's not really necessary because, as far as I'm aware, there was no new information in the recap movie. But you know, once I get finished with the season final season part 1, I know that part 2 is not supposed to come out until I think like 2022 or something like that, unfortunately, so we still got a ways to go on that. But like when I get finished with all the way through final season part 1, then I'll do like another video on that. And I'll talk about Reiner's backstory and that, of course. Reiner, I just call him Reiner because I'm more familiar with that. But of course, you know, him and Eren end up fighting. And, you know, so we get another fight there. Eren, of course, at this point has mastered how to harden his knuckles so he can, like, actually cause quite a bit of damage to Reiner. We see the Beast Titan activate all these new Titans that are, you know, blocking the other side of Shiganshina. From, you know, where the scouts came from. They're like, okay, well, those Titans weren't there before, and they actually kind of see them all transform. And this is when we kind of first start seeing the Cart Titan. And he, you know, the Cart Titan, who of course later on we learn is Peak. And I like Peak. She's smart. She's smart and she's sassy. I like her. But you know, they're all watching them, like Levi and the rest of the squad and Erevan are watching the Beast Titan and all these new Titans. And like he sends all these Titans in. And I just want to point out, there is one very sassy looking Titan in this bunch, and I love its pose. And that Titan has more sass than a lot of people I know. I just wanted to point that out because when I saw that in the anime, I'm like, okay. I just thought it was funny. Has no prevalence on the story whatsoever. I just thought it was funny. And I wanted to point it out. Also, I think Isayama likes to throw in different references to things, and I heard someone refer to these as like a JoJo pose. I've never seen JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. I don't know if I ever will. Maybe someday, but it's not something near the top of my list of other anime to watch. But yeah. But, you know, so, you know, all these, you know, Zeke, the Beast Titan sends in a bunch of these smaller Titans, and then, of course, these big, the extremely large ones, including the sassy one, stay put, because they're just meant as, like, a deterrent, because Erevan is like, well, their answer is to either kill all of our horses, which is probably the main thing that they're going to do, because then we can't escape. If they kill all the horses, we can't escape, and then starve us out, because we won't be able to send for supplies, and supplies won't be able to get to us, and it's not like we can escape this way, because even, you know, getting to Shiganshina, there's not really, unless there's a lot of food preserves that they find in Shiganshina, they're not really going to have the ability to do too much with it. And, you know, eventually they'll run out of food and water, and then the Titans, you know, Zeke and, you know, the Beast Titan and Reiner and Bertold can then pick them off very easily. So of course, you know, it's a good plan on Zeke's part. I mean, I'll give him that. I mean, the man is a master strategist. I'm not going to argue with that one bit. Not in the slightest. He is very good at what he does in that aspect. He was very, very smart. His father was very smart too, because of course we learned that throughout the course of this arc, we learned that Zeke and Eren are half brothers. And of course we learn more about Zeke's mother once we find out more about the basement secret, which of course I'll get to. But of course we have that big fight there, and, you know, Eren is fighting um, Reiner, and then they end up bringing out the Thunder Spears, which of course we get the slight flashback where they're explaining the Thunder Spears are strong enough that they should be able to pierce Titan flesh, and that they, when they explode, they will cause a lot of damage to the Titan. Um, I do slightly wonder if maybe they had Eren turn into like his Titan form, and then maybe like they're like, okay, Eren, stand over there. We're gonna throw this at you. Harden around your neck, but not the rest of your body. We're gonna fire this at your leg, and we're gonna see how well it works. Eren, okay. Like hardens his hands, hardens his neck, covers his neck, and then they just throw the Thunder Spear at his leg. Just to see how that goes. What ends up happening is, of course, they use the Thunder Spears against Reiner, and they use that as a way to cause quite a bit of damage to Reiner. And we haven't seen Bertolt yet. Bertolt's actually hiding in one of the barrels that's on top of the cart Titan. And at one point, Reiner lets out this scream that just, lets them know it's like the signal to, send, to pick up the barrel and to throw Bertolt, so that way he can transform into his Colossal Titan form, which of course him transforming can release this giant explosion, this large amount of steam, and this huge explosion that causes a lot of damage. And such, and that the only one that can survive that is the Armored Titan, which of course Reiner has. And they see this barrel coming toward them, and they know that it has to be Bertolt. And the rest of the group, the rest of the scouts at this point in time that are inside of Shiganshina, because there's a bunch of them guarding the horses, and they have Erwin has certain people guarding the horses and moving the horses around, trying to keep the horses calm, while the rest of the a bunch of the other scouts are like protecting the scouts that are protecting the horses. Marlowe and some of the other new recruits are of course down in this area, and the more experienced ones are off in sight of Shiganshina area at the time. And what ends up happening is Eren and they throw Bertolt, and they see the barrel coming, and they know that it has to be Bertolt, and they're like, okay, well, we got to get out of this area, else we're going to get hurt by that explosion. And unfortunately, Hodge and like her second in command, or her friend, kind of unfortunately get caught in the explosion, and a bunch of other people do. And then it's just down to Eren in his Titan form, Mikasa, Armin, Connie, Jean, and Sasha, I think, are the only ones that are left in that group. And they're like, okay, well, we have to find a way to beat Armin. We have to find a way to stop the Colossal Titan, of course. And then, of course, we have to find a way to stop Reiner. And, of course, they end up using, certain ones go after Reiner, and then Armin and Eren are left to deal with Bertolt when he turns into his Colossus Titan form. Mikasa and her group use the Thunder Spears against Reiner, and their aim is to they attack around his neck, and that causes a lot of damage to him at one point, and then Bertolt finds him that way at one point before he changes again. I think Bertolt changes twice. I could be wrong. I don't remember. But then he Reiner reforms again at one point. And he, of course, Reiner and Bertolt still have their ODM gear, and they're still able to use that to, jump around and everything. And at one point, Armin and Bertolt, Armin tries to reason with Bertolt, and he's, well, why don't we come to agreement? Let's just talk this out, type of a thing. Because of course, admittedly, it's not a problem to try to go for the political route, the less violent route, before you enter nothing but bloodshed. Armin is definitely one of the better guys to use for that. Let's try to handle this like gentlemen before we kill each other, okay? And of course, Bertolt is like, well, we'll tell you what you want, but all of you have to die. That's what we want. That's what all of you to die. Every single one of you devils inside of the walls has to die. And of course, they don't want to die. You know, Armin and Mikasa and Eren and all the rest of the scouts and everybody else in, the walls, they don't want to die. That's the whole point of this freaking series is no, we don't want to die. We don't want to die by the Titans. We don't want to die by you guys. We don't want to be killed by the Marleyans or the rest of the freaking world that want us dead for something that our ancestors did that we have no control of and that you guys are making us the monsters when it's not our fault. And you're punishing us for something that our ancestors did. And by that right, you should be punished for stuff that your ancestors did. You know, Isayama did a very good job of thinly veiling history lessons in Attack on Titan, in my opinion, and I think he did an excellent job at it. Excellent job. But of course, what ends up happening is Bertolt transforms into his colossal titan form, and him and Eren kind of fight, and Mikasa and her group with their thunder spears are trying to deal with Reiner, and of course they attack around his jaw, because if they get him to open his jaw, then Mikasa can go inside and slice him out. And they think Hodge is dead at this point in time, but Hodge shows up at kind of like the last minute and is able to, they got one thunder spear on one side of his mouth and the other one, and they're able to. And so Mikasa can go inside and cut, Bertolt out from the inside. And they do that. They get him cut out, and they have him, he's blindfolded, and he doesn't have his arms or his legs because reasons. And they're dealing with that. And at one point, Hodge literally is ready to, chop his head off. But before that, we have Zeke has started to, he takes these giant boulders that I think Pete keeps bringing. It's either Pete keeps bringing them to him, or one of the other or some of the other Titans keep bringing him these giant boulders, and he'll take the boulder and break it in half, and then crumble it into good sized chunks of stone, and then he'll I don't play baseball. He'll wind up and he'll throw them at where, at the wall where, Armin, Eravin's up on top of the wall, and Levi was there, and of course there's the rest of the group down below that are, protecting the horses, and that, Armin or Erevin and Levi go down, and they kind of rally the troops, and Erevin's basically, he's like, okay, we got a Hail Mary pass at this. We got a suicide mission that we're going to do. And I will lead you into it. And of course, Erevin keeps having these images where he sees himself standing on top of the corpses, the bodies of so many other scouts that have come before him, other scout leaders, other people that have been killed simply because they wanted to find out what was beyond the walls. And he keeps having that image. And then, of course, at one point he's talking to Levi, and he's like, does it make me selfish for wanting to not go be part of that attack so I can find out what's in that basement? So I can find out what I wanted to know since I was a child, what my father wanted to teach me since I was a child, and what my father died for. And he has this image of all the other vestiges, not the vestiges, it's not one for all. All the other, all the ones that they've lost so far, waiting behind him. And I think we see Petra in the background, and there's a whole bunch of other ones that have died throughout the course of the series that we've personally seen, and other ones that we just haven't seen because they were, they died before everything happened, when Eren and Mikasa and Armin, joined the scouts and everything. But we see them around Armin or around Erevin, and him and Levi are talking, and he's just I have to do it. I have to be the one to lead this charge. And of course, the plan is Erevin and a bunch of the rest of the scouts on the horses are going to charge full tilt towards where the Beast Titan is. And they are going to set off their flares, their smoke flares, at various intervals all at the same time, to keep making it harder and harder for the Beast Titan to be able to see where he's aiming. So that way he'll, hit fewer and fewer of them. But unfortunately, there are enough of them that even with that type of spread out and with all of the smoke, Zeke is still going to be able to take out a lot of them. And they know that it's a suicide mission that they're going into Erwin doesn't hide that from them. And he does that, and then the other part of it is Levi goes his way along the wall, and then he's supposed to jump from Titan to Titan, like slaughtering each of the Titans as he goes, as he makes his way to Zeke, to the Beast Titan, and then he's supposed to attack the Beast Titan. And like the smoke is also, it's meant to keep the Beast Titan's attention on them, on Erwin and the troops that are riding towards him. Keep that attention focused on them. Keep the Beast Titan from paying attention to what's going on next to him, so he doesn't notice that the other Titans are falling, coming close to him. And admittedly, it does work. In Erwin's defense, it does work. Unfortunately, it costs all but two of those scout recruits, one of them being Erwin himself, and he's extremely injured by it, unfortunately. And the other one is Flush, whatever his name was. It's like the weird hair. And Marlowe dies, unfortunately, and like he had remembered, he had just started to figure out at that point in time, I was like, oh wait, I like Hitch. I am an idiot, and then he died. Yeah. I liked Hitch. She didn't want me to come here because she likes me too. Oh, frick, I'm an idiot. And he dies unfortunately, but Levi is able to jump from Titan to Titan and slaughter them, and then he gets to Zeke, and he does a lot of damage to Zeke. He like literally goes down Zeke's arm and just like causes so much blood, and then he gets to Zeke's neck, and he's able to cause so much damage to the neck that Zeke can't heal from it even in his Titan form. And then he gets Zeke out of there. He pulls Zeke out of the Titan, and he literally has his sword is in Zeke's mouth. His blade is in Zeke's mouth, ready to end Zeke. Because it was, he wants to kill Zeke because Zeke has caused so many freaking problems. He wants to kill the Beast Titan because he's caused so many problems. And he's ready to do it. He's right, he's like, we know that if we keep causing you a lot of damage, then you can't regenerate fast enough. And as long as we keep a certain amount of damage on you, your body can't change into a Titan. I would assume that probably just from what they've learned with dealing with Eren, and with even seeing like what happened with Amir and like what happened with Renner and Bertolt, that obviously you can choose when you want the Titan ability to activate. Took Eren a little while to get that under control, obviously, as we saw way back at the beginning. It took him a while to be able to control that, but he was. And then, of course, we get the moments where, Levi's about to end Zeke, or at the very least, probably, I mean, probably what their idea was, they have the injection that they can use. They have the one injection left that they can use to turn someone into a Titan, and then allow that person to, change from a Titan, and then change someone into a Titan, and then they can then eat one of the other shifters, and then they gain the shifter's power, and they return to being human. And their plan is to their main intention is, I'm assuming their intention was to use that from the beginning, use that on Erwin, and probably their main goal was to probably get it to the point where they capture Zeke or whoever was inside of the Beast Titan. And then, they change Erwin into a Titan, and then he eats the Beast Titan person, and then they then gain the ability, he'll then gain the abilities of the Beast Titan. Admittedly, we of course learn that, Zeke has royal blood, so he has a few extra things that he can do as the Beast Titan with having royal blood inside of him. Admittedly, if you would like put the Beast Titan and the Founding Titan in the same person, so like if Zeke ate Eren, or if Eren ate Zeke, then, devoured them, then, Eren would then have that power. But the thing is that, Zeke with his, royal blood would be able to work with that. I may end up making a couple of videos about my own Attack on Titan, I guess, kind of theories, / also just kind of based on what we know about different facts about the different Titans. At some point. I am aware of the time travel theory and how that was kind of knocked out of the window, but I can understand where the theory came from. I'll probably make a video where I talk some about that, but um, after I finish with the rest of season, the final season, part one. But what ends up happening is, of course, the Cart Titan comes out of nowhere, grabs Zeke, and has him in her mouth. We learn later on that the Cart Titan is Peak, female, blah 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 blah. But I'm just gonna refer to her as Peak. Grabs him, and runs off, and Levi's like chasing him, and probably slaughtering more Titans as he goes to keep up with him. And inside of the walls, inside of Shiganshina, we have Bertolt transformed into his Titan form, and he's he kind of slammed Aaron into a wall, and Aaron kind of has a concussion at this point in time. And Armin told Aaron this plan that he has for how to defeat Bertolt, how to defeat the Colossal Titan. And like they see that like if he moves, he can't let off his steam, but the more steam he lets off, the more it diminishes his muscle mass. Not his bones or his teeth, but his muscle mass. And if he runs out of muscle mass, then of course, A, he can't move anymore because he doesn't have any more muscles to move his body. B, he doesn't have the ability to release any more steam. Also, you get rid of all the muscle mass around you, and the Colossal Titan doesn't really have skin to begin with. That of course leaves his neck open for damage. So that's a good way of using that power. I would say that what Armin does is he's like, okay, he tells Aaron his plan, and then Armin jumps at Bertolt, which is literally, admittedly, a very stupid thing to do. I mean, thankfully it works out in the end, but jumps at Bertolt, releases his ODM gear, and like snags onto one of Bertolt's teeth, because the teeth aren't diminishing and they'll stay, as opposed to trying to grab onto flesh or the muscle. And unfortunately, Armin is getting very basically roasted alive. In that moment, because of all the steam and heat and everything that's coming off of the Colossal Titan. And Aaron has kind of, he's dropped down to the other gate, and he, Bertolt's watching this, through all the steam and everything. He can still make out Aaron's form, so he thinks that Aaron is just kind of still too weak to move. And of course, at some point, Bertolt kind of, it's not like he runs out of steam. He just kind of like lets the steam down, because he's pretty sure that Armin is kind of dead at this point in time, or at the very least he can't fight back anymore, because like everything was like roasted off of him, and that's a disturbing thing. And he drops the steam, and he looks down, and he sees that it's not Aaron's Titan form in front of the gate anymore. It's an armored corpse of his Titan that has plugged the gate. And then he doesn't realize fast enough that, of course, Aaron comes up behind him, attacks him with the ODM gear, and then slices Bertolt out of his own neck. Because he doesn't have time to activate his steam again. And, Aaron, defeats him that way, and he pulls Bertolt out of his, out of the Colossal Titan. His arms and legs are not there. And, because they found that, it takes the body has to put more effort into regenerating from that form, and it can't turn into a Titan. Levi put Zeke in the same form, and at this point in time, Reiner is in the same state, where they can't regenerate, or they have to regenerate the rest of their body before they can regenerate, and it can turn into a Titan again, of course. And what ends up happening is, of course, Aaron and, Aaron gets, he has Bertolt, and Bertolt can't go anywhere because he's kind of pinned. And Aaron lands on a roof, and this is when the Cart Titan appears with Zeke on her back. And I don't remember if at this point in time she has, well, Hodge was ready to decapitate Reiner, to prevent Reiner from, so Reiner can't be a threat anymore. And, what ends up happening is, Hodge is about ready to decapitate Reiner, because she's telling, she told Mikasa, okay, go and find Levi and find the syringe. And if for whatever reason you can't find him, send up a signal flare. Doesn't matter, and I'll use that to attack this. And I'll take that as a signal that I need to decapitate Reiner. Because it's better to have him dead and lose that ability to get that power than to, whatever. And, than to risk him reforming. And what ends up happening is, of course, at this point in time, Peak shows up and she grabs Reiner and she has him in her mouth and she runs off. She almost killed Hodge and I think it was Jean in the process. But gets them out of the way. And then of course, her standing or Peak there with Zeke is kind of tied to her back, and she's got Reiner. I think she's got Reiner in her mouth at this point in time, and she's staring down Aaron on this roof, which he's got Bertold with him, and he's got his blade to Bertold's neck. And what ends up happening is, of course, Zeke sees Aaron and he recognizes him instantly. And, we don't quite know about their relationship yet. But, Aaron is, he's ready to slice off Bertold's head and kill Bertold. And, at this point, Levi has showed back up. And Zeke is he doesn't have the ability to be able to fight Aaron before Aaron can kill, Bertold and then, deal with Levi and such. So him and, so Peak leaves. Peak runs off with, she's got Reiner in her mouth. She's got Zeke on her back on the carts that she has, and she runs off, hops off. And at this point in time, Levi's there and he's got the injection and he's about ready, and they find Armin's body and it's still breathing. And they're like, okay, well, you got to inject him and then he can eat Bertold, and then Reiner, Armin will be okay and we'll have Bertold's power, the power of the Colossal Titan. And Zeke's ready to do that. And then, I can never remember his name. It's like Floch or Floch, whatever. Floch shows up and he's got Erwin with him because Erwin's barely alive. And he's got Erwin and he's like, Commander Zeke, or to Levi, we've got Erwin. I've got Erwin. He's still alive. He deserves that shot to be able to turn into a Titan and devour Bertolt more than Armin does, type of a thing. And we get that whole confrontation that happens, and like Mikasa shows up, and Hodge and Jean and Sasha and Connie show up. Sasha's kind of a little out of commission at this point in time. She's kind of strapped to Connie's back, and Aaron and Mikasa are trying to beg Levi to give the shot to Armin so they don't lose Armin. And of course, Levi and Hodge and Floch are ready to give the shot to Erwin to let him continue being the leader of the scouts and everything. And he's ready to do that. He's ready to do that. And, he sends the rest of them off and he's like, well, you have to go anyway because we can't have the rest of you around when this happens. Because then, the Titan will then attack one of you instead of Bertolt. And they leave Bertolt. And Bertolt's just like, head and torso. At this point in time, like, don't I get a say in whoever gets to eat me? Type thing. It's like, no, you don't. You killed hundreds and thousands of people. You don't get a say in this matter. You don't get a say in who gets to devour you. I'm sorry. Just sit there and shut up. Just lay there and shut up. Maybe if you're lucky, you can get yourself off the roof a little further and, then maybe it'll take longer for the Titan to eat you. I get some sympathy for Bertolt in regards to everything with, we get more sympathy for Bertolt and Reiner and Annie, of course, when we learn more about their backstories, of course, in the final season. But, and what ends up happening is Aaron and, they leave. And it's left to Zeke, and he's got Armin over here, who's like kind of burned to a crisp, and then he's got Erwin. And Erwin kind of like, I'm assuming Erwin is like almost dead at this point anyway, but he just like raises his hand, like I'm assuming just like trapped in a memory type thing, like raises his hand, and he lets out the question that Levi hears of like, how do we know there aren't people outside of the walls? And, Levi makes the choice and he chooses Armin. He, injects Armin with the serum, and then Armin turns into his Titan form and he eats Bertolt, which I find disgusting, so you probably won't see the picture here. And, he gains that power, and he, then transforms into the Colossal Titan. And the rest of the group, um, the rest of the group, the cadets that are there at the time, they get him out of the Titan, and they're all very happy that he's alive, and they're all on top of the wall. And Armin, has a dream where he sees the Colossal Titan staring at him, and he wakes up, and then of course they do the whole explanation of what happened. We did this, and Mikasa and I were basically committing not fraud, not heresy, mutiny type thing, in order to try to get this to try to get you to be the one that got the shot instead of Erwin. And Armin's like, you should have given it to Erwin. He would have been a much better person to use this on than me. And the rest of them kind of disagree with that, of course. But what ends up happening, Levi's the one that made the decision. And then of course, Armin is of course like disgusted by, of course, the fact that he had to eat Bertolt and everything, and that now he's the Colossal Titan. He's like, I'll use it to the best of my ability, but I'm still disgusted by it, type thing. And then he goes, and then the rest of the group go, and they go to the basement. And of course they find their way to Eren and Mikasa's house, and they dig their way in, and they get to the basement. And Mikasa and Eren keep having flashbacks of different things that they of course remember from being in the house and growing up there for so many years. Eren for his whole life, Mikasa for part of her life, and how much they loved Eren's parents and his mom, his mom and his dad, and even Armin being there at times. And they probably had Armin and his grandfather over for dinner quite often, I would assume. And considering that Armin and Mikasa and Eren have been friends for a long time. They talk about all the books and everything that that Armin's grandfather still had from his parents, that are about like the outside world, the oceans so big that are full of so much salt that people could try forever and they would never get all the salt out. Rivers made of fire, which is of course lava. Huge deserts of nothing but sand. Wastelands of sand, and like all this stuff that they've read about in the books. And go to Armin's house later and try to see if how many of those books survived. And if so, take them with you. Those would probably be a wise decision. But what ends up happening is, they get to the basement, and they try the key in the door, and the key doesn't work. And so Levi just kicks the door down, which is funny. And then they get into the office, and they're looking around. It's like, well, there's nothing odd here. And then of course they find the desk, and there's like a little hole, a keyhole in the desk, and they open it up, and it's a drawer, and it looks empty, but it's not empty. It's a false bottom. And then they find all these books in there, and they start reading through the books, and they find the photograph. And of course it's a photograph with the explanation of what a photograph is. And he's like, this is a picture of me, my first wife Dina, and our son Zeke. And and then they start reading through the books, and they learn about the outside of their outside of the war, outside of their island, there's a much more advanced civilizations that's called Marley, and that they have a whole bunch of Eldians, that their people are called Eldians, and that they're in this place that's called the Liberio internment zone, which is where they're basically treated as nothing but devils by the Marleyans and by the rest of the world, and where they have to wear their armbands all the time whenever they go out, and that their armbands represent them as Eldians. Very similar to how the Jews had the concentration camps in World War II, and how all the Jews had to wear either have armbands or have the star on them, and not just the Jews but other people as well. People in the Nazi occupied areas, I think it was people who were gay had to wear pink triangles, and different races and stuff like that had to wear different symbols that represented what they were, or different religions had to have the different symbols and everything. The most prevalent is obviously the Jews had to have either the armband with the Star of David on it, or the pin with the Star of David on it. And so there's quite a bit of references to that in there. Isayama is not, of course, trying to promote that concept by any means, but he's trying to make similarities there. And we find out that Aaron's father had grown up in one of these areas in the Liberio in the Marley Empire, and that him and his sister one day had left the internment zone when they shouldn't have to go and see a hot air balloon, and they end up running into these two guards, and one guard, that if they leave the barracks, they have to, if they leave the internment zone, the Eldians have to pay in either a beating or hard labor. And Grisha's like, it was my fault. Don't hurt my sister. His younger sister. He's like, it was my fault. Just punish me. I'll take the punishment. She didn't do anything. I dragged her here. And of course, then one of the guards beats Grisha, and the other one takes his sister. And then when Grisha gets home, he finds out that his sister seems to have been torn apart by dogs. We, of course, find out later that it was the guy that was supposed to take her back that, of course, just took her and let his sons watch as their dogs tore her apart, because his name is Gross, and he is gross. And, we get the moment where it's, we find out that the Grisha's parents, of course, sit him down, and like they're extremely, they like thank Gross for the fact that it was like he didn't tell them that he's the one that let their daughter get killed, that he's the one that literally had her killed in front of him for his own amusement, for his and his son's amusement. He had, he's like, they thank him for the fact that he beat their son, and that he was nice enough to bring their son back. And and then of course they do they tell Grisha, it was like, we're descendant from a woman whose name is Amir, and she was a Titan, and she made a deal with the devil, and she, the Eldians spent for 1800 years or something like that, spent that amount of time, they ruled over all these other races, wiped out bloodlines, forced other people to have their children, all these horrible things. And, and they caused the Titan Wars, and, and then, the Marleyans came along, and they were able to, they defeated, the Titans at the time. And, they banished a huge number of them to Paradise, to the island. And, the rest of us here, we're under Marleyan rule, and they're benevolent to us and letting us live here, and letting us, have the ability to live in this area. And that they bless us with the fact that we get to try to atone for our ancestors' sins, which is complete and utter BS. And it's just complete and utter BS. And Grisha then grows up, and he kind of went by that same standard a little bit, probably not as far down the rabbit hole as his parents went. But he ends up, he becomes a doctor, and then he comes across a man who has like a weird an X-shaped scar on his shoulder, and he asks about it, and the guy says, well, I'm a revolutionist. And then Grisha joins the revolution because he remembers everything that, he joins them. And then, of course, we learn about the owl that's part of, that's a revolutionist spy that has made his way into the Merlian military police. And he sends them Dina Fritz, who is a direct descendant of the royal family, that is a direct descendant of Amir Fritz, who was the first Titan. And that she shows up, and that she teaches them more information about them, more about the 9 Titans, more about the founding Titan, all this other information. And that so many of the Titans are under the control of the Marleyans, and that her and Zeke get Grisha and Dina get married. Dinah, whichever, they get married. And they have their son Zeke, and then of course they find out up at the Marleyan warrior program, which would allow those of Eldian descent to join the Marleyan warrior program. And if you are chosen to become one of the 9 Titan shifters, then your family is then given honorary Marleyan status for your sacrifice. And Grisha and Dina kind of force Zeke into that role. And they're like, okay, well, you have to do what they say, but you have to find this information, and you can't actually believe what they tell you to do, but you have to do it anyway. And it's just like just so much pressure on this one child. And Zeke then turns his parents in. He's like, well, I can either I can turn in my parents, or they can be discovered, and then my grandparents and I get punished along with them. So he turns in his parents, and then Zeke and his grandparents, Grish's parents, are kind of left alone. They're left, and Zeke does end up, of course, he gets the Beast Titan later on, and of course he has royal blood, and Grisha and Dina are tortured, and and then they're taken to the edge of Paradise, and Grisha is watches as a ton of the other revolutionaries get they get injected with the spinal fluid, and then they get turned into Titans, and then of course they start making their way inward towards the walls to cause more damage. And we see some of them again later, like there's an old man in the group, I think, that ends up being like the same old man that almost eats Armin and then actually eats Aaron, and that Aaron then like transforms inside of him. And so we do that, and then we see Dina is there, and Grisha tries to plead with them to not kill Dina, to not turn her into a Titan, tries to say that she's royal blood, but the same military guy that had been the one that beat him, not Gross, but the other one, had, he stopped him from talking, and he's like trying to prolong Grisha's suffering, saying, I was like, well, let me see if I can torture him a tiny bit more. He's, all the Marleyans have, like, they don't have any more fingers. They've had, or not the Marleyans, all the Eldians don't have any more fingers, and their hands are bandaged, and their fingers are all gone because they pluck them off for torture, which is disgusting. And he watches as they inject Dina, and she transforms into a Titan, which of course happens to be the Smiling Titan. That is, of course, the one that later on ends up is the one that kills Carla, which is, I'm pretty sure, just Isayama going, yeah, I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna have it be that Grisha's first wife is the one that actually kills Carla. And and then kills Hannes, and then of course Aaron of course punched her at one point, when they were all at the end of the second season. He punched her, and that activated the coordinate Titan inside of him, the founding Titan, that allowed him to then control the other Titans to attack her. And and then it ends up being Grisha's about to get changed and thrown and transformed, and instead of it being that it's Kruger, we find out the guy's name is Aaron Kruger, he shoves Commander Gross off of the side, and then Gross is eaten by one of the Titans that's down there. And then Grisha watches as Aaron Kruger changes into a Titan, and explains that he was the owl all along, that he was an Eldian that made his way into this, into the defense force, and he, attacks the ship that the rest of them are Marleyans on, and he kills all of them, and he destroys the ship, and then he sits with Grisha, and he explains, I had seen what they had done to my parents out of the last revolutionists, and I watched as they were burned alive, and then I had an Eldian doctor be able to fake my blood test, so I could pretend to be a Marleyan, and so I could make my way into here. And I've tortured so many of my own kind. I've turned countless numbers of them into Titans on this very wall, and sent them to go after my own kind, all in the hopes of trying to find a way to stop the Marleyans, to free the Eldians. And he explains this all to Grisha, and he explains, I'm going to give you this power because doctors make good spies, and then you can go, and I'm going to turn you into a Titan, and then you can eat me, and then you'll gain the power of the attack Titan. And then you need to go, and you need to make your way to the wall, make your way to the walls, find your way in there, be a doctor, and love someone in those walls, and have a family, and find the coordinate Titan. and then continue this mission, because after 13 years of having this power, you die. And, because part of the curse of Ymir, and this, Grisha obviously does accept the power. He lets Kruger turn him into a Titan, and then he eats Kruger, and then he gains the power of the attack Titan, heals his hands, and then he makes his way into the wall, which of course this is where we found out, in season 3 part 1, this is kind of where we learn, this is where he was found outside of the walls, pretended he didn't have any memory, came into the walls. Kruger had given him the photograph of him and Dina and Zeke when Zeke was still a child, and he keeps that with him for the rest of the time. And then of course he marries Carla, and they have Aaron, and then we get caught up to then he's the one that went after the royal family when the walls were destroyed and begged them to try to stop the Titans, and then he got the founding Titan from them, and then he gave all that power to Aaron. And Aaron is, of course, realizing, he's going through all of these memories in his own head. Him and Mikasa are kind of locked up for a little while because of their, attempted mutiny type thing, insubordinance. And then, of course, they explain to Historia and the rest of this council about what they found in Shiganshina. And they're like, okay, well, there's all this new information. We're a descendant from this race that are called Eldians, and there was this woman named Ymir, and there's blah, 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 blah. And Historia decides, okay, we're going to give this information to the people. We're going to print it, and we're going to tell them everything. We're going to tell them what we were descendant of, that all the people, all of the Titans that we've been killing for 100 years are actually humans, actually Eldians like us. And so we go through all of that, and and they release all that information to the public. Some of them believe it and just accept it. Some of them don't believe it and argue against it. Some of them believe it and then want to find a way to fix it. And we have all that, and Aaron spends more and more time training, and then of course we have the moment where there's some confrontations, of course, that happen between Aaron and Armin and Mikasa and some of the rest of the Floch, whatever, who had been trying to get Erwin to be the one to get the shot instead of Armin. And so we get a whole bunch of that, and there's this big confrontation. Then of course we have the medal awarding ceremony where Historia awards all of the scouts that returned with medals, and probably honorary statuses to some of the other ones, more honorary status to Erwin and to the rest of the recruits that unfortunately died in the conflict at Shiganshina. And Armin is now going to practice on how to use his Colossal Titan, of course. Aaron's going to do more practice in his, Attack Titan. They're going to do more from what they can learn from Grisha's notes, more from what they can learn from Aaron's memories. And Aaron finds out that every time that he touches Historia, he gains more and more memories of his father, more memories of Aaron Kruger, more memories of probably some stuff in her side of the her family from being a Reese, all those types of other information. And Reiner actually had a letter that he was supposed to deliver to Historia. Well, he still calls her Krista, I think. Krista or Historia, I don't remember exactly which one he refers to her. But he has this letter that's from Ymir that was supposed to go to Historia, and that Hodge takes it, and she's like, we'll inspect it for anything that could be harmful to her, and then we'll give it to her. And okay, at least Reiner kept up that end of his bargain. I mean, Ymir did save him and Bertolt and kind of handed herself in. I would have liked it if Ymir got to live and was actually able to live out her life with Historia. That would have been nice. But no. But we get all that, and then of course we get Historia gets the letter, and she reads the letter, and in the letter Emir's like, Reiner's watching me as I write this, so I can't really give you any specific information about what I know about their world or whatever. because he'll stop me or whatever from what I put in here. And then, you know, Amir just basically tells Krista, tells the story. I'm sorry that we didn't get the chance to get married and to grow old together and everything. And I wish we could have, and I'm sorry. And, and I love you, and that I will always love you. And that, I wish you, the best of, I wish you happiness. Um, and everything. And so we get that kind of closure there for Historia and Emir. And then, of course, we cut to, I think it's about a year later. And, there's no more Titans that have been coming to the walls. They've been taken care of. All the ones that are there are done. They've taken care of them. The people have spread out, back into the boundaries of Wall Rose, I think. Made their way probably back to Shiganshina to a degree. Seeing whatever else can still be salvaged from other areas, started to rebuild, more crops, more farmland, more land for livestock, of course, so that way they can start to rebuild more and have more of a supply of things, more horses. And the rest of the group, the rest of the scouts have now made their way, they've finally made their way to the edge of the island. And they get to see the ocean for the first time. And, Armin and Mikasa are so happy. And, Jean and Sasha and Connie are very happy. And like, oh my God, it's salty. It's in my eyes. Help. And like, just that type of stuff. And like, Hodge is happy. And Levi's just Levi in the background. Like, okay, it's a large amount of water. Can we go now? Type thing. And, Aaron has probably started to become a lot more distant from the rest of the group at this point, by this point in time. And he like points across the ocean and he's like, all of our enemies are there. Our enemies used to be the Titans. And now we know that our enemies are Marley. And some of them are our own people. And we need to find a way to stop them, to free ourselves, because we have a right to go beyond the walls, beyond this island. And it's a lot to take in. And and of course, the next season, the final season, which I'll work on getting either finished or fully caught up on, and then I'll do a review when I get the whole final season all finished, for the final season part 1. But it's a lot. And Aaron has grown a lot as a character. They all have. But also, Aaron is also getting to the point now where he's starting to, I think, fall more for the power that is inherent from having the Attack Titan. From having that, like, the royal family are kind of subservient to whoever has that power, is subservient to like the will of the first king of the walls, of Karl Fritz. And this is where we start to learn more about that. That he had been a coward and he left. And I'm going to do a whole video about like my theory on something to do with that and like his will. But he, Aaron Kruger had the Titan for 13 years, the Attack Titan for 13 years after he somehow obtained it. And he had that will inside of his head for all that time, and then he gave that power to Grisha, and then Grisha spent the next, 12, 13, whatever years, inside the walls. And then he got the power of the founding Titan after he had seen everything that had happened with, he saw his comrades get turned into Titans. He saw his wife get turned into a Titan. His son's probably still in the warrior program as far as he knows. And he goes through a lot of that, and like just all of that has gotten put onto Aaron, and now he has the combination at this point in time of like all these memories that he keeps seeing. And of course, we know later on from what happens in the manga, that Aaron has been kind of planning this whole thing out from about this point forward. He knows what he has to do. And he's, he closes himself off more and more from his friends, from Mikasa and Armin, and, from the rest of his group, from Sasha and Connie and Jean. and even from Hajj and Levi and Historia, he just, pulls himself further and further inward and just does kind of what he wants. And I'll talk about that more for the final season part one a bit, because I just finished the part where he fights the armored titan, and then I'll finish up the rest of it. And so there's a lot there, and we'll see what happens with that. I mean, I know how the manga went, how the manga ends. I think I heard something about there's supposed to be like a director's cut of the final chapter, and I may end up reading that if I get the ability to, or I will finish watching Attack on Titan, of course, when they do the final season part two. I'll watch that when they do it, when that comes out. But that's what I got for this part, for the Attack on Titan season 3 part 2. I'll be doing season 4 part 1, or the final season part 1, very very soon, and then of course I'll schedule it for when I put it up. As I've stated, I kind of pre-record these just because sometimes it's harder for me to find sometimes to record, so I'll do sometimes maybe 1 or 2 videos at a time. And then, like I did this one, as I said, on the same day that I record the Joe video, for the Digimon stuff, and they may end up coming out, like this may come out before then, and then, or Joe may come out before this. It depends on how I arrange the rest of the videos. And of course I backlog the Disney ones just because then I can kind of post them, when I need to. So, and I might do like I kind of have a couple of Attack on Titan theories I kind of want to talk about a little bit. Just for like my theory, and I'll probably look to see if that theory is out there, or if like I do the video and then like I find out that there's a similar theory, then if someone tells me about it, then I'll be like, okay, well then someone else either proved it or disproved it, and that's fine. Just kind of a theory of how something could have been done differently to a degree. So I might do that type of a thing. I might do a couple of I guess, considering it to be slightly happier what if scenarios to a degree, I might do that. We'll see. Or I guess possibly a more gory what if scenario. There probably won't be that many of those, but that's what I got for this. I thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video and me rambling, and I hope you have a nice rest of your day. Don't become introverted like Aaron. Enjoy your friends, enjoy your life. If there's anything that this pandemic has taught us, it's don't neglect your connections to people. Don't neglect that. So that's what I got. Thank you very much, and I hope you have a nice rest of your day. Bye. The only truth in this world is that there is no truth. Anyone can become a god or a devil. All it takes is for people to believe it.